Good morning to you, fellow travelers of Journey of Consciousness. We'll just do a quick meditation, Turiyam, and then we'll start. The atmosphere around us is purified by the divine power. The atmosphere around us is purified by the divine power. The atmosphere around us is purified by the divine power. The divine energy descends upon us. We are all being purified and blessed. The divine energy descends upon us. We are all being purified and blessed. The divine energy descends upon us. We are all being purified and blessed. May the divine power protect us, guide us, and lead us in all our activities, day and night, in all places, at all times. Salutations to Mother. Salutations to Father. Salutations to our Guru, Sri Vedadi Maharshi. We start meditation at Agnya Chakra. Turiyam. We conclude the meditation. We spread the energy over the whole body. By the grace of divine power, we all may enjoy good health, long life, enough wealth, wisdom, and peace. May the whole world enjoy prosperity, happiness, and peace. Gently rub your palms and fingers, pass the energy over the face, raise your hands, take a deep breath, bring your hands down. Dear friends, it's a great honor to be with all of you who have been in silence for last 2 days, third day going on now. It must be a great experience. I thought in this context, I will share not only the subject we are going to deal with, as to how the silence in Alia started. Because now we are all connected. I was just going through the unruly, and what I got, the information was just before 1985, January 1st, just a few days before, Swamiji got an insight that if the world peace has to happen, all of us should have the same kind of thought, that vibration all over the world. And that is how on 1st January 1986, Swamiji declared that each center, even if they are chanting Varga Vaiyagam, Varga Vaiyagam, Varga Valamdan, or may the whole world enjoy prosperity, happiness, and peace. If all of us keep chanting, even for 1 hour in each center, round the globe, all the 24 hours, the New Year day will be starting off with very positive vibration for peace, prosperity, and happiness for the entire world. Because this has been his thought for the last 30, 40 years. And he has been concretizing these thoughts. Why I'm saying all these things is we are a part of a much greater thing, not only for our individual peace or individual emancipation, but our silence is for a much broader, much wider context. It's a social service, and at the subtlest level. And then, just before 1986, January 1, he gets an idea that just 1 day alone is not enough. He starts this 1 month silence, where he would be in silence for 30 days, non-stop, and others can join. They can join for 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, whatever duration they want, voluntarily. And exactly like this, some meditation, some introspection, and rest of the time thinking about world peace. And Swamiji says himself, he used to spend 3 to 4 hours just blessing the whole world. Apart from writing books at that time, when there's absolutely no disturbance. And from that year, every year, in the month of November, right up to December, for 1 month, it used to be there. And later it was reduced to 15 days because of his pressure of work and advanced age. And from 1986, January 1st, he declares it as World Peace Year. So this silence is contributing to that for world peace. And he calls it as World Peace Year, number 1. So now it's the 35th year. So just like we have AD, BC, Thiruvalluvar year, and so many calendars are there, Maharishi has started a calendar, and for which he says 1986 January 1st is a starting. And we are all a part of that great yajna, great sacrifice. So when this idea comes into us, when we are in silence, immediately expansion of mind takes place. So that's what Swamiji calls it as magnanimity. Our horizon widens. It is not just for individual or family. We become a world citizen. We become world peace ambassadors just by participating in this yajna. And you people, in spite of busy schedule, you have made this 3 days journey as a part of that bigger thing. So Vedadri Maharishi's blessing will always be there for us, because we are partaking on that journey of Maharishi. And he needs this to be replicated all over the world. So I'm happy to be a part of this great thing. You wanted so many lectures have been there. You have been in silence. You have been in introspection on various topics. And today's topic is God consciousness and virtuous way of life. Again, Swamiji comes out with some breathtaking concepts about God consciousness and even about virtuous way of life. The beauty of Maharishi is he goes to the very depth of the problem, the very origin, and then from there he starts. Whereas in all the other sciences, economics, education, other fields, they start off from somewhere and then proceed. But what they are not doing is they are not going to the source. Whether it is science or we're going to the ultimate starting point or starting somewhere. Only about 100 years back, we even came to know about atom. And then later about molecules, about the proton, electron, neutron. Now going further to so many subatomic particles. But are we going to the starting point or starting somewhere? In economics, ultimately, what is matter? For economics is to deal with matter, but what is matter? It goes to the very depth of that. So if we start developing this art of going to the very starting point of anything, then only truth gets revealed. Otherwise, it is half-baked. Of course, maybe all of us cannot be able to go to the depth, and that is where we need the guidance, the blessings of Maharishi. A Rishi means visionary. Vision, a person who has got a great vision, who can go to the very starting point or go to the future as well. Trikala Jnanam, knowing the past, able to study the present, and so come to a conclusion or forecast the future. So these are called Trikala Jnanis. So in this particular topic, we are going to see what is virtuous way of life and how all those things started. And God consciousness, what is that consciousness? And what is God? And right from first principles. I can slightly deviate even our physical exercises. Swamiji goes to the very starting point of how the exercises started in history, in human history. And today, should we do the same exercise for which it was started, or it has to be changed? And that is why, even about yoga, he says, yes, yoga was being done, but at what age? Maybe 1,000 years back, 2,000 years back, yogasanas. But today, is it equally applicable in these modern days when we have got gadgets for everything? Is our physical body fit enough to do that? Is it necessary to do that? And then he comes out with modifications. That is what is a great visionary. That's why it's called a Maharishi, true to his name. And Vedadri, the very child's name. Veda means knowledge or the books of knowledge. Adri means mountain. So a mountain of knowledge is the name, he got it right from birth. And the Maharishi is title given by all of us for his great insight. So if we are able to, at the end of this silence session, if we are able to imbibe this one quality of questioning anything, not taking anything for granted. In the very first song about divinity, which is for children, Yellam Valla Devamadu, Sarva Shaktiman Ishihavo, Sarva Vyapi is present everywhere. Engum உள்ளது நீ கமர சொல்லால் மட்டும் நம்பாதே. Don't believe because it has been said by somebody. Come to your own conclusion by trying to go to the truth. In Tamil, he says, Unmai. Unmai means truth, isn't it? But what he says is, Ulmai, go to the very depth and find out that is the ultimate truth. And that approach, if we can all apply in any of our fields, we will be very creative and looking at the things in a totally different perspective. and we would be able to bring peace, prosperity in any field, including at our home, and peace in our family. All those things are possible. There are so many ways of looking at it, but can you go to the very depth? Insight, understand, stand under, go to the lowest frequency and look at it. So with that vision, Swamiji has talked about how the virtuous way of life started and how the search for God started. When was it started? And why all the religions have come out for peace only. The great masters have tried to find solution to the society at that time. And they started teaching things which are applicable to that society so that they can all live happily. So peace was their ultimate aim. But why so many religions? Now religion itself has become a problem. It has been one of the causes for division in society and wars. So what went wrong and where? Let us try to see some of them which Swamiji has come to our level and explained it. So virtuous way of life, these virtues means doing things which are not harmful to self or others. A very beautiful definition. And we are all very familiar with that virtuous life has talked about three things: morality, duty, and charity. Again, morality was a very difficult concept. Dharma. What is dharma? What is adharma? Are you following the Manu's dharma or are you following some other dharma? So many confusions were there. But Swamiji is able to define what is morality. It's non-violence. We all know the definition. Any thought, word, or deed which does not give pain to self or others in present or in the future, to the body or mind. One liner, but covering everything. Till we met Swamiji, we must have thought that we should not give pain to others. But we never thought giving pain to self is also an immoral act. Even a thought, word, or deed which is giving pain to self is also an immoral act, because we condition ourselves that our physical body is what we are. If divinity has created everything, and if everything is there in divinity and you are also divine, then doing anything against you is also an immoral act. Again, a new dimension he gives for a definition for morality. And duty, again, a beauty. Due to society, due to divinity. You are indebted right from the time you are born, or even before you are born in the mother's womb. The nature is taking care of you. You are in an air-conditioned room, beautifully covered, and still you are breathing, and then you are living, you are growing there, and then coming out. Again, it is because of nature every moment. As breathing stopped even for a few minutes, we are gone. So every moment of our life, it is because of the love and compassion of nature, Mother Nature, that we are even alive. We are able to talk to each other. And then every moment of our life, it's because of the society that we are surviving. We tend to forget about that. We try to see only the negativities of the society. But only after coming to Swamiji, we understand that it is because of the survival, because of the society we are surviving, however imperfect the society is. Society is made up of people like us, and we are all imperfect. And this imperfection has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, where knowledge was not up to that level. And so it's a sum total of all that. But with all the imperfections, it is because of that today we are alive. And this concept is beautifully connected with our Kaya Kalpa. At the time of food, think of it. At the time of bath, you think of this. So morality, duty, and duty also, he says, how it should be. It should start with self. Again, another important concept. You don't have to do anything at the cost of yourself. A very nice concept. We thought that this unselfish act we should do, selfless. Maharshi says there's nothing like a selfless thing. You have to start and take care of yourself. If your health is not okay, how long can you serve to others? You become sick, and so it's a double uh, loss for the society. One is you're not able to do anything to the society. On the contrary, so the society has to do its service for you. So that's why Maharshi, in the World Conference here in 2002 at Dahlia, the first sentence he makes is he makes a statement that today also I did the exercise, physical exercise. A man addressing for world peace among intellectuals. So he was not talking very high. He was saying, today also I did the exercise. So like this should become a part of life. Taking care of ourselves is a greatest virtue. And that is a stepping stone for social service. And then he gives a gradation also. Take care of yourself, then your family, because you are more indebted to them. We are indebted to the society, but we are more indebted to our life partner, our parents, our children. So without doing the duty, without returning the duty to them, you can't think of a world peace, and it cannot be lasting long. He says, if your wife or life partner is not ready for something, postpone it. Even to come for meditation, even to come for a system, if the life partner is not ready, be ready to postpone also and keep blessing. We have got so many methods. So over a period of time, there will be a change, and at appropriate time you can do it. Then only it will be successful. And then extend it to friends and relatives, to your country, because the country has provided you so much. The country where you are born and the country where you are living, which is giving you livelihood. So a duty to the country is important. And then duty to the world. One not affecting the other. What a beautiful concept of duty consciousness. If this Swamiji is any one concept, if it is taken and practiced by all of us, heaven, you don't have to go after death. This can be made heaven. Today it's a hell. And when he explains it, it looks so simple. Why is it that we did not even think about it? And then charity. He says charity is, Vivekananda says that charity is twice blessed. It blesses the person who receives it because he gets something what he's longing for and he's not able to fulfill that. It could be money, it could be some company, it could be anything which he is wanting for survival, and you're giving it. So that person is blessed. But the person who gives it, after all, he's losing something. So what is the benefit for him? The benefit is his mind expands. Magnanimity becomes a part of it, part of your personality. And a realized person, a great person, sometimes they even serve others at the cost of themselves. But Swamiji does not want us to do that also. He's not asking you to do that. Whatever is surplus, you share it. Whereas on the contrary, Swamiji was doing all that. So these are some of the characteristics of a great person, a person who comes once in a century or in millennium. At every stage, he has sacrificed, but he doesn't want us to do that much. He saw a person, a cobbler, maybe at the age of 23, 24, very young at that time Swamiji was. He sees that the cobbler stomach was completely gone inside. So he asks him why he didn't take breakfast or what. He says, I didn't take dinner also previous night. So immediately he is able to feel empathy with him. And then he says, I should see what that pain is. After all, he was from a poor family. But at this stage, now that he's a young person, he wants to go through that experience so that he knows what hunger is. And this, so he stops taking dinner right from that day, just takes a decision like that. So that is a great sacrifice, charity of highest order. In Tamil, he says, Nanmai pirarkalithu nashtattai thanirpu. Doing good for others, even at the cost of self. But he doesn't ask us at all. That is his greatness. Only surplus he wants us to do that. Even that we are not able to do because our minds are much more conditioned. And all these silence practices, when you go inside, then you will come to know what is essential, what is non-essential, how much indebted we are, what is happiness, and what is pain, pleasure, what is peace and ecstasy. So he gives it as an exercise as well, as a practice. So this silence is the best period to understand all these things. Maharishi writes in his book that these books are not just to be read once. You have to read it again and again. And as your mental frequency goes down, for example, if you read something in silence period, the meaning in it will be much different than when you're sitting down in a sofa and then reading it in a relaxed manner. So unless you go to the frequency in which Swamiji has written, till then we have not fully understood the book. Like Bacon says, some books have to be read and thrown away. I don't remember the exact quotation, but the meaning is something like this. You can take a book, read a book once and then like a novel, just throw it. Some books have to be studied more often. Some books have to be chewed and digested. They are great books. And that is what is Swamiji. Whether it is Tamil or English, whether it is poem or prose. Of course, in poem is excellent. For him, even science, philosophy, religion, virtuous way of life, everything comes as poems. Economics. I don't think of any scientist coming out with poems on scientific discovery. Yes, morality, duty, charity. So that is the virtuous way of life. We all know that. But then, how did the virtuous life started in human life? Animals cannot feel the pain of others, or it cannot do anything about it. It's only a human being who can feel the pain of others and also has a capacity to do something. But how did it all start? So he says that, after all, we have come from animals, and for thousands of years we were living like animals only. Even now, isn't it? The human form, but animalistic tendencies are there, and science has given us tremendous power of destruction. Okay, so he said we're all living like animals only, nomads, no place to stay, just keep moving, killing animals, eating them. So that's how we have been living. And then at some point of time, of course, we also started taking fruits and other things which are available. And then he found that a seed had fallen and then a plant has come. So he came to know that if you sow a seed, then the plant will be coming. So he tried to sow some seeds. But then he came and saw nothing was happening. Every day he used to come and see, but nothing was happening. Slowly our intellect was growing. The sixth sense was developing. What is sixth sense? To infer something which cannot be conceived by five senses, perceived by five senses, you make an inference by sixth sense. That is sixth sense. And then you try to go ahead and prove it or disprove it. Assumption, inference, these are all characteristics of sixth sense. So then he finds out that nothing was coming out. So he thought maybe my inference is wrong. And then that happens to, rain happens to come. And then after some time, the seed, from the seed, the plant starts growing. So like this only, the first beginning of cultivation started, or growing the plants, growing the fruits, trees, all those things started. So like this, so this is the way where apart from animals or eating plants, the byproducts of that, he himself started growing it. Now this is the difference between us and the animals. Animals cannot do that. They eat something ready-made. Just like nowadays we have it, isn't it? Totally ready-made. Coming to our house, just make a I don't know whether it's animal life or whatever. Yes, so don't take me seriously. Yes. So then after some time, he starts growing the seeds, and then different seeds, he finds out that soil and rain, how it helps, what type of soil. So like that it goes on. Then he starts growing even the grains. That's much later. The grains also can be grown, and then we get that. But then they used to take a longer period of time, and then he had to store them. Earlier, he doesn't have a place to stay. He will be a nomad going from place to place. But now he has to settle somewhere, uh, make them grow, cultivate, and then harvest, and then store them somewhere. So then he had to, from the nomadic life, he had to start staying in a place and living there. So then he needed appropriate housing, sheds. So slowly all those things started. And then he says one day, by mistake, by fortune, the thing falls in the fire, and then the taste was even much better. So then he started understanding how fire can be used for food. So like this, he starts developing. And once he starts cultivating and staying in one place and producing things, then there could be some other nomads. After all, these people have worked very hard, and then when they are storing there, these people come and take away things. And so all their labor gone waste because some group. So then they had to form a society. And then somebody has to look after that. And that person was the head. And he had this stick on this. And if it's a red color, that is how Senghor. The kingdom and all started. So actually, a king is nothing but a security person. That's all. But because he had this power and underworld dawns with him, so he becomes very powerful, and we call him royal kings. So when Swamiji explains all these things, you see, I don't know how Swamiji could see all these things. And so all the respect we give for king and queen vanishes. We have come to know that we are just chowkidars. They were once chowkidars. That's it. Okay, anyway, so that is how the political life starts. And anyone who is not working for it but tries to grab it, then he is given punishment. So the judicial system. So all those things develop, which was not there earlier. So that is a political system is starting, judicial system is starting, and this was going on, and punishment systems. If you do this, this will be the punishment. So slowly, our civilization, the way today we are, the starting point was that. But still, with all these punishments and all, still people were committing all that. The crime was there, it was not reducing. It is at that time some of the great intellectuals. So they brought up a concept that after all these great forces are there, the Panchamahabhutas are there, all those things are happening so beautifully, perfectly. So there must be a greater power who is looking at us, just like your GPS, always watching you. So that person, if you do anything wrong, you will be, after death, you will be sent to hell, where you have all sorts of problems you are undergo, very heavy punishments for the rest of your existence. And if you do something good, then you will be sent to heaven and you will get all the pleasurable things. So this, even it could have been a false this thing, but they brought it in order to see that the society is peaceful. So that is how the first concept of God came about. So in order for people to lead a virtuous life, the concept of God came. So slowly, this started and went on, and as the next leader took over from him, slowly some sort of corruption comes into being, because the second or third person may not be up to that level. And so he creates his own story about it. And in different cultures, great masters have been born, and they wanted peace in the society. That was the aim. And whatever realization they had, whatever enlightenment they had, they were not able to express it to the common man. There was so much of gap between him and the rest of the society. So depending on the society, they had to come down to that level and tell things which may or which may not be true, create problems to self or others. They may even made up stories, but for a good cause. And so that was going on fine. And people believed in this. That was absolutely okay. But as society started meeting each other, and so Christ in some place, depending on that society, he would have told something. And that would have been appreciated. Of course, not immediately, he was crucified. But later only they realized the greatness of the man and people started following it. Similarly, Prophet Muhammad somewhere, Adi Shankara somewhere, Buddha somewhere, Mahavir, all of them great souls trying to help the society. And depending on the culture, depending on the understanding, depending on the environment, the same truth they told in different ways. I recollect Swami Vivekananda, he makes a statement like this. In Western countries, when he visited America or Britain, so there he found that missionary activities are going very well. Christian missionaries doing fantastic jobs. So social service was very high in those countries. So he doesn't have to talk about social service, whereas understanding of God was not very clear. So there he talks about Advaita and what is a God, what is the real nature of that. So that's the type of lecture he gives there. But when he comes and lands in India, so he finds there are already too many gods. So we are all worship of gods for everything, but the social service aspect was not there in us. If somebody is not doing well, it is his karma. That's all. I don't have to do anything about it. I want to connect myself with God. So that was understand. That is the worshipping of God we had. So we don't have to create more gods about concept about God was not important. What was required for social, this virtuous way of life, charity, being in one with the downtrodden. And so he starts Ramakrishna mission. So Ramakrishna Mat is the Advaitic concepts. Ramakrishna mission, I think, is one of the first Hindu missions. He starts. So even the very same great man in different cultures is addressing the same problem, but telling them in a different way. Now imagine across millenniums, across cultures, they won't all be telling the same truth in the same way. But over a period of time, when we started, communication was faster, when we all got together, so there was some confusion. So which is right? If there's truth, there can be only one truth. So then the question of myself is superior, my group is superior, your group is inferior, and all those things started. So the very fact of concept of God and virtuous way of living, concept of God came for virtuous way of living. But later, the concept of God itself, worship of God itself, became the anathema for virtuous way of life. It was one of the causes for many wars also. So again, there is a need to relook even what the concept of God is. And further, as science started advancing, we all know, right from Galileo's times, the religion and science were always in conflict. So religion was dominating till then, but once scientific spirit started in the people, there was a dichotomy. So religion separately, science separately. So you have your own field, I have my own field. There was a dichotomy. And it continues. Even now, science is not bothered about this thing, religion is not bothered about science. It's continuing like that. But Maharishi is a true yogi. Yoga means harmony, but not harmony just within your body, mind, and soul, which is what we think. It's at the lowest level. But he is ready to harmonize everything, harmonize the whole world, harmonize religions, harmonize religion and science, harmonize economic concepts, harmony of everything. So that he is a Mahayogi. And we are lucky that such a wide vision is given to us. So he, the highest, the peak of the sixth sense, he starts questioning everything right from childhood. So if at the end of silence, if you are able to question everything with the depth to which you have gone, you will be able to get at the truths and be confident about what you're saying. So that's exactly what Maharishi was doing. So he was inborn, asking questions like that. So if the truth is one, there must be only one God. Why so many gods are there? So that was his question. So what is God? And whether poverty is real, is it God-made or man-made? And what is life energy? Three questions, basic questions. And this was bothering him, and he went on questioning. He may be doing some all odd jobs, but his intellect was only thinking about these things. So then he comes to the conclusion that all the religions must be talking about same God, but expressed in different terms because of these things, the cultural backgrounds. And science was not fully developed to explain the concept of divinity. And so, because Swamiji had a scientific spirit and a spiritual outlook, he was able to combine both. So, in deep meditations, he was able to go to the level which was beyond the present science. At the same time, because of his scientific temperament, he was able to find out what are the pitfalls in the religion. Many superstitions had gone into it. Many of the rituals may be required at one point of time, may not be required now. And worship of God need not have even a language. Silence is a language common to all of us. So worship of God or taking your consciousness to that level can be without words. And that's exactly what you people are doing. You may be a Muslim, Christian, believer in God, non-believer, rich, poor, man, woman, doesn't matter. Silence is a beautiful language to even understand the divinity and also bring harmony within us. So in that silence, Swamiji reached up to that stage and he wanted to find out why religions are fighting among themselves. And he found out that in all religions, there are only two aspects. One is worship of God, the other is virtuous way of life. And he found virtuous way of life is common everywhere. Every religion talks about don't inflict pain on others, don't tell lies, all those things. Be magnanimous, things like that, which are very common to all religions. So then what is the problem? The problem is in worship of God or understanding that all gods should be one and how do I worship? So because in the name of rituals, things we started separating ourselves. So he wanted to find a solution to this. And this is one area which is very difficult to touch upon. And he had the guts to do it. And I recollect one statement from Abdul Kalam ji, another great spiritualist and scientist. He visits Malaysia or Indonesia, I forget which country it is. And he was asked a question. He was a Muslim talking in a Muslim country. So he, one of the audience, and he was talking about spirituality and how harmony can be there among religions as well. So one of the questioners asks him, how can you have harmony in religions when concepts are so different? So then he says that, you see, the virtuous way of life is common to all. So let us practice that. Theology, let us not touch. Theology means what form you're going to worship the God. So let us not touch that. So we'll talk about the virtuous way of life. And they say, do good to others, don't insult others, don't kill. But that is where Vethathiri Maharishi had the guts to see that theology also can become one. A very great courage is required for that. And Abdul Kalam ji came here because he understood the greatness of Vethathiri Maharishi. He came to the ashram. Yes. So Swamiji wanted to find out what is that one thing which is called God. And the moment we say God, we immediately, like a parrot, we say omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and love and compassion and all that. But if you give a form to it, then it's limited. And we got hundreds of forms or a cross. So things like that. So he found that something is wrong here. Some derailment has taken place. So he starts questioning from first principles again. So let me take each thing and find out whether it is God. Neti principle, Naiti, Advaitic way of approach. So you take the earth, he said, can we call it as God? Yeah, it's a part of God. But can we say, yes, we worship earth, some people, but is it God? He's asking. And he's putting the definition. Is it all pervasive? Is it present everywhere? However big it is still limited. So it's not God. Naiti. Then he takes sun, very, very big compared to Earth, but still it's limited. So it can't be God. So like this, he looks at the galaxies. He finds that everything, however big it is, they are limited. So then the only one thing left, which is space. And he finds that space is unlimited. There's no limit at all. Even within so-called solid things, even within an atom, the smallest thing we have, even in that they say 99% is space. So if at all there can be one thing which can be considered as all pervasive, present everywhere, it must be space. First time when I heard this, I was spaced out. Okay, but he had the guts to do that. So then he says, okay, omnipresent, and then is it omniscient or omnipotent? Again, space seems to be, of course, these things we all know, but in silence, when we hear to Swamiji's logic, it goes even deeper into it. So it's just a revision of that, but quickly we'll go through that. So is it omnipresent? Yes, reasonably. But what about omnipotent? Is it the most powerful? For us, space looks as the most inert matter with absolutely no strength. But then he comes out to the wonderful logic that if it can, the whole universe is just floating on space, space must be mightier. Again, a mind-blowing concept. And so space must be the mightiest. Okay, granted. But how can you say it is omniscient, all-knowing? So this is where Swamiji comes out with what is consciousness. And a beautiful definition. Order, what is that? Order of function in everything, everywhere. We are supposed to be intelligent if we drive our car properly. So in India, I don't know how many people can be considered having sense. Okay, this is just. Whereas if the whole universe is operating so beautifully with such an order for billions and billions of years, and right from a small plant, exactly knowing how to grow, exactly replicating the mother plant. And so if everything which is there in the universe has got consciousness, the source of it must be all conscious. And so he says space also has got consciousness and total consciousness. So if, and from there, the universe is coming. So universe, everything has got consciousness, fractional consciousness. So like this, till then, because that consciousness concept was not clear, so then we created a person with all-knowing intelligence. But again, a form was given. Swamiji used to joke, first a man, and then after some time, just like we got married, he also should get married. And once married, they should produce children. So this type of imagination went on and on. And so the concept of God was totally derailed. So Swamiji, with a scientific temperament, with the logic, he sees the whole thing through. So, and then he says, space is the mightiest. And that is the conclusion. Einstein came from the scientific viewpoint that space has an impact on light waves and things like that. Whereas he has given some importance to space, what Maharishi says, space is the most powerful. And it is not an unconscious thing. It is total consciousness. Because everything else derived from that has got consciousness, they are all fractional. Just like in the form wise, they are fractional. So then he is able to link how the whole universe came from the space. In religion, two important questions are, what is God many or one? And if it is one, what is that? And then the further question is, from that, how everything evolved? Is it a creation theory that God created? So then he asks the question, does it have any requirement? Because it is full, it doesn't have any requirement. So why God should create this? And then if God has to create, he has to have something other than him, like a goldsmith. If the chain has to be prepared, there must be gold, material, this thing, and then an intelligence to create, to make a necklace. So one is called an efficient cost, other is the material cost. So if God has created from something, so that must be thing other than God. So if there is something other than God, then God is not complete. So he says the creation theory does not hold water. So then he comes out with transformation. The divinity itself transforms, the space itself transforms into everything else. And it can become space once again. So the totality is never reduced. So he uses the word plenum, purnam, akshayam. So all those things we talk about God fits in for space, but with much more characteristics which Swamiji has talked about. So he talks about plenum, force, consciousness, and later includes that concept of time as well. Even about time, he comes out much later. So first he was talking about only the first three, because the concept of Shiva being static. So he said static. But then how from Shiva, how Shakti could be evolving. So then he understood, he thought, he came to this conclusion that something which is static cannot produce anything. So there must be some quivering movement. And from that quivering, the magnetic waves would start, and they will be starting spinning, and then they join together. So the magnetism, when it is intensified, becomes the various materials, and the waves emanating from them are magnetic waves. And they, depending on the proportion between space and object, it becomes 5 different transformations, Panchatanmatras. And in the living beings, it's a human, it's also mind. It's a basic consciousness taking up different forms. So he calls it as first level of consciousness, as pattern, precision, regularity. Then the second level, cognition, experience, discrimination, when the mind is there. And when it comes to human beings, it can also go beyond and try to find out who is it who is talking about consciousness. And ultimately, what is the source of all this consciousness? To that level, the sixth sense can take us. So we can become one with divinity, divine consciousness. But physically, we may be limited. But consciousness-wise, we can expand and become one with that. So that Advaitic concept, or even the Dvaita and all, comes into this. All these things ultimately comes into it. Only some technical differences are there, the perceptions. So this is the greatest gift of all the living beings. Human being has got this gift. And we can reach that. And then only virtuous way of life will become natural. Otherwise, virtuous life alone, by any diktat, will not happen. So that is where worship of God or understanding the reality or God consciousness, divine consciousness is a prerequisite for virtuous way of life. And then only peace within, peace in the family, world peace is possible. And that's exactly what he addresses in United Nations in 1975 in New York. That individual peace is essential for world peace. And for individual peace, God consciousness is important. And that should translate into virtuous way of life. So there the science, religion, economics, all those things come into place. Later we're going to have a speech on Vidadriyam, so they will be able to touch upon those aspects as well. It's a great honor for me to be a part of your great practice of silence, and I'm extremely happy to share some of Swamiji's concepts about divinity and virtuous way of life. Thanks for this opportunity, and wish you a very happy silence, a very happy new year, and let the next year be glorious to all of you. And through you, in the United States, a very important country in the world, may peace prevail to the rest of the world. Thank you very much. Be blessed by the divine. Or Heavenly.
Be blessed by the divine. Thank you, Aya, for sharing your profound insight on God consciousness and virtuous way of life. It was enlightening. Now let's bless Arulnidhi Palachandran Aya, Senior Professor Arulnidhi Palachandran Aya, and his family be blessed by the divine. By the grace of divine, Senior Professor Arulnidhi Palachandran Aya and his family may enjoy good health, long life, enough wealth, prosperity, wisdom, and peace. Thank you, Aya. Now, let's stay on this breakout room for a few minutes. We will be closing it in 30 seconds, and then we'll be joining the main room. Thank you.